Plínio Salgado. Plínio Salgado, January 22, 1895 December 8, 1975, was a Brazilian politician, writer, journalist, and theologian. He founded and led Brazilian Integralist Action, a political party inspired by the fascist regime of Benito Mussolini. Initially a supporter of the dictatorship led by Getúlio Vargas, he was later persecuted and exiled in Portugal for promoting uprisings against the government. After his return, he launched the Party of Popular Representation and was elected to represent Paraná in the Chamber of Deputies in 1958, being re-elected in 1962, this time to represent São Paulo. He was also a candidate in the 1955 presidential election, securing 8.28% of the votes. After the 1964 coup d'etat, which led to the extinction of political parties, he joined the National Renewal Alliance political party, obtaining 2 terms in the Chamber of Deputies. He retired from politics in 1974, just a year before his death. Early life. Born in the small conservative town of São Bento de Sapucaí in the São Paulo state, Plínio Salgado was the son of Colonel Francisco das Chagas Salgado, a local political leader, and Ana Francisca Rana Cortez, a teacher. A very active child at school, he had special interest for mathematics and geometry. After the loss of his father at the age of 16, which is said to have made him a bitter young man, his interest shifted towards psychology and philosophy. At the age of 20, Salgado founded and directed the weekly newspaper Correio de São Bento. In 1918, he began his political life by taking part in the foundation of a party called Partido Municipalista. This party congregated town leaders from municipalities in the Paraíba Valley region and advocated municipal autonomy. Also in that year, Salgado married Maria Amélia Pereira, and on July 6, 1919, his only daughter Maria Amélia Salgado was born. 15 days after giving birth to the couple's daughter, Salgado's wife Maria Amélia died. Filled with sorrow, Plínio left his original study of materialist philosophers and found comfort in the Roman Catholic theology and began to study the works of Brazilian Catholic thinkers such as Raimundo Ferreira Brito and Jackson Figueiredo. The death of his wife had a great impact on the course of Salgado's life. He would only marry again 17 years later to Carmela Patti. Through his articles in Correio de São Bento, Salgado became known by fellow journalists in São Paulo, and in 1920 was invited to work there in Correio Paulistano, the official newspaper of the Republican Party of São Paulo, where he became a friend of poet Menotti del Pique. He was a prominent participant in the Modern Art Week in 1922, leading the nationalists who wanted no foreign influences and sought a purely Brazilian form of art against the anthropophagics who synthesized the new art from foreign influences. He published his first novel, A Stranger, in 1926. After that, Alonso Cassano Ricardo, Del Pique and Candido Mota Filho, he launched the Green-Yellow Movement, a nationalistic group inside modernist movement. The following year, also alongside Del Pique and Ricardo, Salgado launched the anti-movement, which exalted the indigenous peoples, particularly the Tupi, as the true carriers of the Brazilian identity. That same year, he published his book Literature and Politics, in which he defended nationalistic ideas with a strong anti-liberal and pro-latifundia stance inspired by Alberto Torres and Oliver Viana. His shift to far right-wing politics led Ricardo to launch the flag movement, a social democratic break away from the green, yellow and anti-movement. Integralism. In 1930, Salgado supported the presidential candidacy of Julio Press against Getúlio Vargas. At that time, during a trip to Europe, he became impressed with Benito Mussolini's fascist movement in Italy. After his return to Brazil on October 4, 1930, a day after the beginning of the 1930 revolution which deposed President Washington Luiz, Salgado wrote 2 articles in Correio Paulistano defending Luiz's administration. Nevertheless, with the victory of the revolutionaries, he began to support the Vargas regime. In the newspaper Arazo, founded by Alfredo Egidio de Souza Arana, Salgado developed an intense campaign against the constitutionalization of Brazil. As such, he drew the eye of anti-dictatorship activists who burned down the newspaper's office just before the outbreak of the constitutionalist revolution. At the height of the Vargas dictatorship, Salgado created the Society for Political Studies, which gathered together intellectuals sympathetic to fascism. Months later, he released the October Manifesto, which provided the guidelines of a new political party, the Brazilian Integralist Action. Salgado adopted virtually all fascist symbols and forms of organisation, such as a paramilitary organisation with green-shirted uniformed ranks, highly regimented street demonstrations, and aggressive rhetoric, although he publicly rejected racism. The movement was directly financed, in part, by the Italian embassy. The Roman salute was accompanied by the screaming of the Tupi word on air, which means "you are my brother," while the Greek letter Sigma Sigma served as the movement's official symbol. Even though Salgado himself was never an anti-Semite, many of the party members adopted anti-Semitic views. Integralist Action drew its support from lower-middle-class Italian immigrants, a large part of the Portuguese community, lower-middle-class Brazilians, and military officers, especially in the Navy. As the party grew, Vargas turned to integralism as his only mobilized base of support in the right wing, which was elated by its fascist-style crackdown against the Brazilian left. In 1934, Salgado's movement targeted the Communist Party, then under the leadership of Luiz Carlos Prestes, as an underground party mobilized a conservative support base to engage in street brawls and urban terrorism. On 1937, Salgado launched his presidential candidacy for the general election scheduled to take place in January 1938. Aware of Vargas' intention to cancel the election and remain in power, he supported his Estado Novo coup, hoping to make integralism the doctrinal basis of a new regime, as Vargas had promised him the office of the Minister of Education. The president, however, banned the Integralist Party, treating it the same way he had treated other political parties after transforming Brazil into a one-party state. On 1939, Integralist militants tried twice, in the months of March and May, to promote uprisings against Vargas. Despite denying involvement in the event, Salgado was arrested after the May uprising and was imprisoned in the 17th-century Santa Cruz fortress in Niterói, Rio de Janeiro. About a month later, he was sent to a 6-year exile in Portugal. During that period, he persistently sought to rehabilitate himself with the Brazilian regime, praising it in several manifestos, including its decision to declare war against Germany and Italy. Later career. Salgado returned to Brazil in 1945 with the end of the Estado Novo regime and then founded the Party of Popular Representation, reformulating the integralist doctrine. Still driven by the ambition of becoming president, Salgado ran for presidency under the banner of his new party in 1955 but finished last, obtaining just 8% of the votes, around 714,000 votes. Then he supported the inauguration of President-elect Juscelino Kubitschek, challenged by the National Democratic Union, and was named to head the National Institute for Immigration and Colonization. Salgado was elected to represent Paraná in the Chamber of Deputies in 1958. He would be re-elected in 1962, this time to represent the São Paulo state. In 1964, he was one of the speakers of the March of Family with God for Freedom rally in São Paulo against President João Goulart. Salgado supported the 1964 coup d'etat which overthrew Goulart, and with the introduction of the two-party system, he joined the National Renewal Alliance party, obtaining 2 terms as a São Paulo deputy. Salgado died in São Paulo on 9 December 1975, aged 80. He is buried at Morumbi Cemetery.